Hello everybody, Brad Johnson here. I'm here on the beach and I think it would be a great location as I'm going to be talking about the true nature of timelines. And so, as I'm going to be discussing this is also reflecting on the work I'm doing through the New Earth Insights live every Thursday. When I start that broadcast, and then sometimes I'll go to the cards and I'll pull out some cards and look into possibilities and sharings about current events and so forth. But I want to really go deeper into a state of education, helping one to further understand what timelines are all about. So we're not looking at the past and we're not looking at the future as it relates to something that would be generic. When we're looking at different timelines, timelines themselves are always brought forward through the impression of the collective consciousness. So it is always the collective itself that is responsible for what we would term as the future. It is always the idea of what we are looking at through the past as well too. That has always been brought forward through the impression of the collective. There's no such thing as a generic timeline. Think, oh, well, here's 2022, and then here's 2023, and this event will definitely happen on December of 2023, for example. Well, that doesn't really work. The secret behind the nature of timelines is the mass amount of support in regards to the wanting of that timeline to happen. It's when a lot of people really get behind the idea of a certain timeline, and that is what they are completely in support of, and all that support requires is the power of your own thought. So it's very much like how we guide our own lives. We are able to put our intention forward, fuel a thought that is really behind that event, and then at some particular point, a rendition of that event comes together. It's not exactly what we want, but it's giving an impression of a theme that is very close to the thought that we have fueled. Sometimes we may get something even greater than what we expected. That's the wondrous thing about spirit. Spirit will always surprise you. It will never be so predictable, because it does not use the human mind to bring about the fruition of events or people or places or things that take place in your life. The same thing goes with the collective. Where there are prominent thoughts that are being energized, that are being focused on, that are being intensified, then those events are going to come to pass. So this is the nature of timelines. We're not creating something in the future. We're looking at something that is available right now that the collective itself gets behind. And with the collective getting behind that, this is where we can start to see a fruition of energies coming forward that can signify that type of event, even though we don't know exactly when that event is going to come to pass. So what I'm attempting to do through the New Earth Insights is there's a strategy to what I actually do. And this is why some people ask, well, Brad, you feel like you bring about a lot of positive energy, a lot of positive information, telling people not to worry about things. Well, yeah, it's true. Because look what happens when you worry about things. Look what happens when you do put so much concern about a certain event. It comes to you, and now you feel like you're just plummeting down the rabbit hole. You feel like you've entered a personal hell. So that's not my orientation. My orientation is to look at certain things, and as I've talked about, I see them as sharings. I don't really see them as predictions, right? I gave up that term predictions a while back, because it's not about trying to predict the future. You can't predict the future. There's no future to predict. We've never experienced the future. So how can you predict something that does not exist? You can't. Right? Nobody has ever made a prediction of the future. So that's basically putting this all to rest right now. All there is sensing. There's impressions. There's a feeling of that sharing, of, well, this is how things are going right now. And then if we continue to follow this path, this could continue. With the events that are taking place around the world right now, this is where I move into much more of an illuminating and uplifting sharing about it. Saying that, okay, well, here's all this stuff with world agendas, with the COVID agendas, and so forth. And the cards are basically signifying exactly what I'm getting way behind the conscious self here about this, is that things are going to start loosening up, and they're going to start lightening up as well too. Now, as soon as I put that impression of sharing out there into video land here, many of you guys come together and say, I really like what Brad's sharing. I love the idea that he's talking about this COVID is going to end very soon, because people are going to make a stand, people are going to stand up, the corrupt are going to be exposed, the idea of wars on our planet are going to be coming to an end. I really like that. I completely support that. So here's my thought support, right? So just through your thought alone, you support that energy. It's even greater if you go into meditation and you take that thought and you amplify it even greater. It's like you're seeing it as this gigantic sphere and you're making it brighter and brighter and bigger and bigger. And now what happens when you have hundreds of people doing the same thing? You're going to have a really incredible thought there that's going to manifest in some shape, way, or form into the world. What happens when you have thousands of people? It's going to intensify even more. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people. It's going to intensify profoundly. That's my strategy. You see? And like I said, when you're pulling out the cards are just reading, right, the greater consciousness, the subconscious behind the reader, and it can also read the subconscious behind the conscious thoughts of the collective, right? We're looking at those things. And so some people will get upset with me, and I've had that back in 2020. This is why I decided to kind of call off doing the sharings that I did, because back then I did call it predictions. But then I just referred to it as, no, it's sharing, it's sensing of energy, it's sharing of energy, it's just putting that out there. And then I'd get some people that were just really upset. Oh, Brad, whatever you said, it didn't come to pass. It didn't come to... Well, I'm not the one making a prediction of the future, because there's no prediction of the future to make. It's a sensing. It's a sharing. It's a perspective. It's taking this ball of energy and it's putting it out there into video land. It's putting it out there into the collective and saying that many of us who really do not understand how quote-unquote predictions work think that the future is set. It's not. Guys, it's never been set. Not now, not ever. Because there is no future to predict. There is no future that is set. There has never, ever, 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 ever been a future that you've experienced. Not once, not ever. Never have been, never will. So this is the very important understanding of the true nature of timelines. The time is right now. The moment is right now. And we're working through the momentum, constantly shifting, frame by frame, millions and even billions of times per second, throughout all of these different fluctuations of vibrational energy that we call timelines. And timelines are simply dimensions representing a signification of specific events, of specific variables that relate into the nature of influence pertaining to the one or ones that are an observation of them, and therefore creating that overall impression based upon the thought structure and overall degree of what we are doing together, to putting that timeline into fruition through our thoughts that become quite prominent. So it's just a thoughtscape. Everything right now, everything here right now is just a thoughtscape. Wherever you are in the world watching this, right? Whether you're in your front room, whether you're outside at a beach yourself, whether you're in the middle of a forest, whether you're at work, whatever it may be, this is your thoughtscape. And through the nature of the thoughtscape, you are looking at everything around you that has been brought forward by thought. Now, we cannot create and change the entirety of what we see. We can't just go ahead and make the grass around us purple. We can't just go ahead and make the sky above us green with polka dots. We cannot just suddenly make the water solidified, turning it into sand. We cannot make the land into water, because these are again certain properties that are, as it were, the ground rules for the collective consciousness operating on a planet of this make. But what we can do is we can help with the momentum of how we experience events upon the planet. That is something that we do have some say with. We do not have the complete and total say with how these events will come together, how it will play out, but we can certainly see these events and we can see them taking place through the idea of how we work together cooperatively as a collective. Like I said, when many people get behind a certain thought, we are going to see something incredibly profound take place because there's so much energy within that thought. And like I said, this is the premise of what I do through the New Earth Insights Live webcast, is I help you guys to look at things in a much more uplifting perspective, because what I'm doing is I'm helping all of us to clear away something that's bleak and put something that's grand, magnificent, and uplifting in its place. That's what we do. This is not about the idea, oh, Brad, you said this last week and it didn't come to pass and you were wrong. If I was looking at that in the form of prediction, yeah, you'd probably be right. But that's not my intention. My intention is not to say, oh yeah, this is going to happen tomorrow, guys, 100%. It's going to happen next week, guys, 100%, because, well, the future is generic and you're able just to see into it. Do you think if the future was actually here, was actually a thing, and you think if the future was actually a generic timeline, that many other people would be able to see the same thing? But that's an extremely rare thing. It's not going to happen that way. People will always see something different because you are always seeing reality through your unique perspective. The closest thing we have together with each other is that we have similarities to that unique perspective, but we never ever have an identicalness to a uniqueness. When you're looking at your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, your kids, you are never ever going to have identical thoughts to them. You are never going to see the world identically to them. Everybody is seeing the world differently. Even when I say, this thing is going to happen, somebody else is going to say, oh, that's not what I saw. That's not the perspective that I got. Of course they're going to say that. There's no question about that. But what we're doing is we're finding things on similarity. We're finding similar ground here. And so when I'm talking about the idea of the entire agendas that have been happening here, and that they are going to be coming to an end very, very soon, and people start seeing this and saying, yeah, Brad, you're right, there are things. Like in my country, things are starting to shift around. Oh, well, in my country, it's still very slow and not much is happening, right? But what I put out there, that little seed I plant in your field, is saying this is going to come together, guys. This is going to take place. This is going to happen. And now with your thought, there's that green check mark saying, you know what? I believe you. You're right. This is going to happen. And now in my own way, I'm going to do my best to try and make that happen. Through my thought comes the action that supports that idea. That's a timeline. Okay? So we're just constantly shifting. We're constantly going through flux. It's like being in the middle of the ocean. You see these waves. The waves are always happening. It's not a stilled ocean where everything is predictable and nothing ever moves. Right? Even better than the ocean would be the idea of a river. Okay? You can never step in the same river twice. Therefore, as we understand that, you're never going to be able to predict how the river is going to flow. But what you can do is you can put out an intention. You can put out an intention where you're going to be discovering yourself at a part of the river where it's not so rocky. And you walk over to that part of the river where you feel at the bottom, there's really no rocks around there. It feels like a smooth ground. So I put that intention there, but the flow of the river is still a constant. That's the nature with our thoughts. When we get behind each other, when we start looking into these things on a much more deeper level and we find common ground and we amplify that, that is what's shifting the timelines. We could take something that many have felt would be very, very terrible, right? The idea of war on this earth. But being able to step it up to such a point where people are now looking at something different. We're seeing people holding hands. We're seeing people doing rallies. We're seeing people doing freedom convoys. We're seeing people blanketing the entire earth with this pure love. We're seeing people giving compassion to one another. We're seeing people healing one another. And now the idea of that war has a big, gigantic cushion. It has a cushion pad. Maybe that war is still happening on a certain degree, but we've bumped it up. And we've actually, in that sense, shortened its lifespan. We've shortened its lifespan because the higher tones that are being played here upon the earth are marvelous, are encouraging with love and compassion, happiness and joy. So this is what's the game changer. This is what's going to change the game in regards to what we think is a bleak timeline, wherever that bleak timeline may be. Whether it's something to do with war, whether it's something to do with a virus, whether it's something to do with the idea of a government, politics, what have you. I got my fun little background people here. So again, this is the whole idea, is that I'm just a seed planter. I'm not claiming to say that, guys, I'm giving you predictions every time I'm doing New Earth Insights, because I'm not. I'm giving you guys insight. That's why I call it New Earth Insights. I'm giving you guys a sharing. I'm giving you guys a perspective. But do not hang your hat and saying, oh, Brad's wrong. Brad's wrong about this. And, well, I'm not doing predictions, so what am I wrong about? Right? So sometimes I'll look at an event and I'll say, okay, this is the impression I'm getting the event as it happens right now. Well, Brad, what about the momentum forward of this situation? What can we do to make it better? Well, here's the information I'm going to give you. Here's the idea of how we can alter where things are going. We shift the timeline. We shift our perspective right here, right now, and we ride out that momentum, going millions and billions of frames per second towards that new momentum because it's being supported. The great news, too, is that when we're looking at positive timelines, all we need is a very small amount of the population to completely support it, and it will completely rise above any dense or degrading or bleak timeline in its place. So like I said, the idea of war. People are just around the planet and they're sending love to each other. They're blanketing the entire planet with this love and happiness. That is going to completely shorten the lifespan of that bleak timeline. And this again is those that want to try and fuel that. Those bleak timelines are in such a rut that they are, because people are waking up. People are moving into peace, love, and happiness. They're not moving into the point of fear and control and manipulation and hurt and harm. All of that's going away. It's going away more and more. Is there some of that on the planet still? Sure. But it's nowhere near as intense as it once was, because people are taking their power back. And this is what I'm seeing. Not only am I planting that seed in your field right now, but this is what I'm seeing before me. In my own unique reality anyways. I can't speak for yours. But in my unique reality, it's what I'm seeing so much. Even when I'm just here in the park, and there's people that are just enjoying themselves. They're walking around, they're with their dogs, they're enjoying the beautiful view here. I'll show you guys the view too. There's a nice live view, well, from the time I'm recording right now anyways, of this beautiful view here. And people just come here and they just unwind, they relax, they feel so completely at peace here, playing around with kids, playing around with their dogs, having fun, watching the birds fly by, watching people pull into the parking lot. It's all great, it's all grand. But when we look into the nature of timelines, it really is based upon collective nurturing. It's collective drive. It's the way of the collective. It's collective flux. So that's one of the most important things that we have to really get into understanding here, is that there is no future. There is no generic timelines, right? Because a lot of people have attempted to predict the future, and pretty much almost all of them failed, because there is no future. You cannot predict that which does not exist. It's kind of like looking at Edgar Cayce, right? Edgar Cayce was able to look into the flow of many different things, but he was, again, part of a different time. And there were certain predictions for him that did not come to pass as well, too, because everything changes. It's like the people that look into the Hopi prophecy, right? We're expecting to see a lot more doom and gloom and disaster coming together, but that's not what's happening. We're seeing a lot of shifting taking place. It's all just looking at the sharing of momentum of what's coming together. Nostradamus himself, he was even mentioning that I will basically do my best to share the most bleak perspectives regarding what I consider to be the future, so that humanity will look at this and they'll change it. He was hoping to be wrong. And that's another great strategy as well, too. You may just look at things so incredibly bleakly in regards to your reality, and you're putting it out there through books or through video, what have you. People will look at this and saying, I don't want a future like that. I don't want any kind of future that has anything to do with war and hatred and fighting with each other and prejudice. I don't want to have any of that. I want to move into something much more prominent. Then there you go. All the sharings that Nostradamus did are meant to be void and nullified. It's not to say that they don't happen. They're just happening in another dimension that we are not moving in a momentum towards. We're moving into something much more encouraging. We're moving into something much more uplifting, something much more loving. So even though there are current events upon the planet that are quite questionable, that are quite concerning, my job is to plant that seed in your field and say, rather than looking at that, look at this. Let's support that momentum together, individually, in small groups, in larger groups, and now through a great majority of the collective. Because like I said, when you're moving something into a much more positive light, it only takes a small amount of people to do that. About 10 to 15% of the world population that thinks in a very loving and compassionate way, those will be the cornerstones to where we are riding the momentum forward here and now. And one more thing I'll share before I wrap up the video as well too, something that just came to me as I was walking down the beach. It's to understand the nature of a timeline itself, and this is a good way to end the video, I feel, is that when we are here and now, in the present moment, you are not actually experiencing a timeline. Does that surprise you? When you're here in the now moment, there's no definitions. There's no terms, there's no qualities, there's no attributes. There's nothing that you can articulate to describe where you are right now by being present. A timeline only exists through thought. So when you look at time, when you look at memory, when you look at thought, they are all in relationship to each other. In the past, when I channeled Adronis, he often talked about the nature of the past and the future. And he would say that the past and the future are side effects created through the illusion of continuity that is part of the mind construct. So in other words, whenever we're looking at something that we have identified as a past instance or something that is not solidified within us that represents a hypothetical instance to what we term as the future, these can never be true. These are side effects. These are illusions that the thought mind works on, that it composes into ourselves when we're reflecting back on things that have happened, things that have transpired, things that have taken place already. That's how you have a timeline. It's a reflection through thought about what has taken place already. But when you're here in the now moment, there is no time. There is no timeline. Timeline is just a side effect relating to the nature of thought, memory, and time as they are one. So thank you for watching, everybody, and I'll speak to you again in another perspective of the now. Take care. Thank you very much for checking out the New Earth Teachings YouTube channel. Feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And you can check out the websites, newearthteachings.com, where you can order a private session, 3 questions by email, EQ method, and a lot more. And you can also check out healingcodecards.com, where you can grab your mind deck, your body deck, and of course the brand new Body Deck Special Edition. All of these are available in digital editions as well. And you can also get a shirt just like this through healingcodeshop.com, where you can experience the healing codes in apparel form. So feel free to check out these websites. Thank you so much, and I'll speak to you again in the next video. Be well.